Hello and welcome to the WBEE. My name is Lewis Nichols, and today we're getting into some of the nerdiest of nerd stuff. Have you ever wondered what it might be like to run an economic campaign? Are you terrified that one of your players is going to want to try this bizarre niche of role playing? Don't be afraid, my fellow gamers. It's just a skill set like any others. You've picked up many in your days at running campaigns. I'm going to give you a few insights that will allow you to fake it till you make it. Let's start with a spoiler. The second half of this video is going to cover my system for handling investments for your players. In-game stuff. So stick around or skip ahead, whatever works for you. If that sounds more useful than the rest, it's okay if you jump ahead. Also, this is going to turn into one of my longer videos, so get comfy, enjoy it. While you're at it, leave a comment, tell me what you think. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. It's really close to the 400 subscriber mark. I'm almost there. And you could be the one to put me over the top. I bet you noticed that economics is a huge part of the real world. It's big, important, and largely ignored in most gaming. About the deepest you're going to get into it is the cost of N when you're at low levels. Later on, magic services like teleport and magical items might matter, but even then, it's only a little. So should money matter? This is something that is completely up to you and to your players. It's something to talk about at Session 0. But do you even understand it enough to bring it up? Let's start there. What are we even talking about today? So number one, how closely are you and your players expecting to track money? Do they need to mark off silver for every meal? Do they need to buy clothing from time to time? Are you going to concern yourself with the cost of ends in your game world? Are you going to have a big old chart? I might do something crazy like that. This region, this end, this quality level, what the different services are that are available. That's what your document, your world building document, your world building Bible is for. Oh, it's already begun. I talk live into the camera and I go off script. It's okay if you just follow rules as written recommendations. There's no wrong answers here. It's just something to make a decision and move on. What are you going to include in your economic game? Are you going to create your own investment system? You remember I mentioned there's one at the end of the video that you can try out. Turning your game into one where economics matter might just mean that the local industrialist becomes a major quest giver as he pays the party to pursue his business interests. This is business as usual for gamers. Does it really matter why the party is targeting a group of bad guys? Sorry, I'll never do that again. If the government wants you to raid a rival nation's mine, it's not much different than raiding a bandit camp. These are the baby steps that are going to lead you down a path to new wrinkles in adventure. Are you going to track inflation, supply and demand? Does the cost of whatever they were mining at that camp, is it going to go up now? Maybe that was the point of the entire adventure. All right, point 3, Session 0. Once you've decided whether or not you're going to include economic interest in your game, you need to talk to your players. If you're not, most won't care. They don't want to get into this stuff. Most of them won't. However, if one of the players was hoping to become a business mogul, he needs to know that that's not really what you're going to want to do. It's too much work. That's a perfectly valid reason. Remember, if it's just one player in on the action, they're going to require more attention. And that kind of thing is always dangerous. So for the sake of this video, let's assume that you, as a DM, want a stronger emphasis on economics. Your players are going to need to know that. They're going to need to know that those avenues are open and it's something that they need to think about. Some of them will be more interested than others. So have a plan that doesn't leave anybody out. But also, Session 0 is where you want to let them know that they're going to be ignoring something that you want to emphasize, and they might suffer a bit for it in comparison to the other players. With economics being a big deal, it sets a different stage than some campaigns might. It values the non physical stats, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. It means you're going to do, most likely, more role playing. It means more urban adventure, so that rogues and bards are likely to get the spotlight. Those rangers, druids, and the barbarians, they're probably going to suffer a little bit. Not every campaign is for every class. These are huge reasons to talk to your players in advance and let them know as soon as possible before they have their hearts set on a wilderness survival campaign. Opening point number 4. Early in any campaign, you're all getting your feet under you. You're learning about the world, the players are. You're learning about their party dynamics, and you're all getting a feel for the NPCs. In an economic campaign at low levels, it just means that you're playing up the theme. Let players know what money can buy. You inform them of what class divisions there might be, as in economic strata, not character class. What's the difference between the haves and the have-nots? Make sure that the players track their money, marking off daily expenses based on the lifestyle that they're trying to lead. You track their money too, not down to the penny. You're not trying to catch them do anything, but it gives you a good feel for what you're giving them to work with. All right, tangent time. When your party loots, do you break it down into the individual coins? I gave that up a long time ago, but some people still do it. It's been so long, it freaks me out a little bit. You open the chest and you find 500 silver, 300 gold, 10 platinum, and 2 gems worth 350 apiece. In my world, I have a much more diverse coinage system. I mean, I've used half golds, literally minted coins chopped in half. Big transactions might be handled in rods of gold or platinum. Exchange rates might be regulated to protect mining, protect against mining booms. It might even, be big treasure hauls. It just could screw up the whole economy. So it's something to keep up with. At least mention in your notes somewhere. Paper money, it's not out of the question. Despite all that, when I give treasure, it's X amount of gold. It's understood that that's going to include some silver, some platinum, some gems. And yes, I do play that some gems at least are just part of regular exchange. They're standardized to that point. There might be some weight and grade involved, but that's nothing that the players need to be involved with. That's something for the characters. You can play it up if you want to. Now, this is all based on the real world. If somebody asks you, hey, man, you got any money on you? You wouldn't say, yeah, I got a 5 3/4 and a dollar bill. You'd say, about $7. Now, you do you. But this is something else to communicate to your players about, just to make sure that you're all saying the same thing. Now, let me know in the comments. This is another opportunity for you to interact. I will answer you. Do you have any good stories about huge piles of copper or other strange and incredibly annoying treasure hauls? Tangent complete. And finally, point number 5 for part 1 of our video. If money matters, world build it. Describe what the coins look like. Maybe you make them unique. They could be triangles. They could be pentagrams. Maybe they're thick like a button. They don't have to be coins. You can mix and match from kingdom to kingdom or inside kingdoms. Gold pieces will have more effort put toward them because they're more valuable. Copper pieces might just be little hammer-beaten slivers. It can be anything you want it to be, but in an economic campaign, just give it some thought. What are the locals' view on foreign currency? Is it even legal to spend foreign coins within a given kingdom or empire? Are merchants going to weigh your gold and your silver instead of just taking the coin value for it? After all, these are precious metals. In many cases, it's just flat out the weight that matters. Are they going to trust that your coins haven't been shaved? Is there drama over coins? Maybe they're getting defaced because the king's picture is on it and he's unpopular now. I wouldn't rule out disgruntled citizens stamping an X across his face. Your world building Bible or development document, whatever you want to call it, it should definitely have a whole series of questions talking about local currency and the simplicities of economy that the players probably don't really want to know about. It's really a giant opportunity to create more of that in-game exposition that they all love so much. So that's going to do it for part one. Because of the way my camera handles recording, part two, you're not going to get to see the face. We're going to put up some made up images of money things. I don't know what that's going to be yet, but we'll figure it out. I'm going to do at least one exercise that might be kind of a roadmap to one possible series of campaign arcs. I think that will round out what we've talked about so far, because really these are just little things that kind of all add up, but I don't feel like I've really expressed what an economic campaign might look like. So I'm not going to ramble on off script for any longer. Let's move on to part two now. With the preliminaries out of the way, let's talk about that investment management system that I promised. This is just one idea for handling the job. First concept: shares amount to the right to a portion of a business entity's profits. They do not necessarily grant any degree of control or say in operations. Let go your assumptions. They are similar to stocks, but this is not the real world. As a DM, have a think on just what they mean in your world, or even just a given region of your world. It's okay to develop the concept as you go. Just let the players know it's experimental and things might change. Players might get shares of a business as a reward, or they might purchase them. Remember, it's in the community's best interest to offer opportunities like this to adventurers. It ties them to the area and gives them a reason to risk their lives in the name of local prosperity. If the shares are purchased, think about the time it's going to take to pay off the investment when pricing them. 2 to 3 years seems to be about right to me. In other words, if the average monthly income of a share provides 10 gold, a cost of 2 to 300 gold is fine. Also, be mindful of how many shares exist. It could be dozens, thousands, or even more. Having 10 shares in the local sawmill doesn't necessarily give you a voice in its operation, no matter the specifics that apply in your game world. You can be a shareholder and still be a small fish in a very big pond. Finally, think about who can own shares. Do you have to be of a certain social status or be part of a certain class of citizenry? Can you own a share if you are foreign born? Can shares be stripped as a penalty for bad behavior? Can a king or some other head of government strip them away on a whim? While we're talking about all this, don't forget about taxes. But that's a pretty big subject, and we're already going long. Now what you've all been waiting for: methodology. We're going to pull an example out of my own campaign. Recently, my PCs were heavily involved in a war. They were one of the strongest adventuring teams on the field and brought significant numbers of soldiers with them. It was quite a show of force, actually, but that's what happens when you spend 2 years getting to 10th level with veteran players. Anyway, the good guys took the enemy capital and started to take over. Sure, there was some fighting left to do, but the heavy lifting was done. As part of the takeover, a great deal of conquered lands businesses were incorporated and shares issued. This is how the nobility and the rest of the upper class profit from the labor of their holdings. It's a highly modified oligarchy that we're not going to get into right now. Each of the PCs were given shares in 3 business ventures. There would have been a lot of research and negotiation if this would have happened in reality, but we made the selection pretty streamlined. One of the players took shares in a fishing fleet, an armorer's guild, and a farming consortium that primarily grows flax. These are all small shares. However, most of the group piled into the farming consortium. If they pushed it between notoriety and shares, they could probably exert some influence if they wanted to run things a certain way. My party's homeland, the London Vale, ruled by the Heston Authority, is extremely weak at the highest level. The offices that manage investing, incorporation, and profit sharing are by far the most developed sector of the anemic federal government. Okay, the formula. Are you ready for this? It's complicated. To determine yearly profits, I take 3d6, subtract 3d4, and multiply by 100. So what does that do? If you average all the dice together, 3.5 being average on a d6, 2.5 being average on a d4, 3.5 times 3 minus 2.5 times 3. That comes out to 300 gold a year. That's not bad at all for any level character, really. High level characters, it's a little bit extra. It's something to work with. Now, in a record year, if I roll an 18 on the d6s and a 3 on the d4s, you're going to come up with 15. That's not bad. 1,500 for not really doing that much work. You can lose 3 on the d6s, 12 on the d4s. That's minus 9. The first half of the equation represents variable sales and pricing pressures. The second half takes into account expenses. Mind you that in this system, the investor is not really going to be asked to cover losses. In theory, the business keeps a liquid fund that absorbs the shortfall. The formula is a starting point. There are a million ways that you can have fun in manipulating this sucker year after year. Math is fun, right? What are the possibilities? It may be a few sessions before my party takes a break, but the next time they do, it will likely run us up to the first year after the initial issuing of shares. I know that the war is going on, but mostly away from the investment areas. Let's home in on the farming consortium. I'll name it No Sharian Farming, after one of my nature god Spiremen, something like a solar. Naming it was supposed to make it a more concise way of saying farming consortium over and over. North Sharian Farming is worse. I can't even pronounce it right. How about Nosha Farms? Perfect. I'm going to roll for it right now. Yeah, someday I'll come up with a better way to roll dice for the camera. We did okay, though. 15 on the d6s is pretty badass. 8 on the d4s is actually just above average. That's a 700 GP payout. Not bad for not having to put forward any extra effort. So where do you go from here? You can just leave it alone. Do this year after year. Keep it simple. Tell the players to add to their totals and move on. Or you can tinker. Now for the first year, it just is what it is. But what about the future? In my situation, I know that things are volatile. There'll be new foreign management and pissed off lifers. The whole system of doing business has changed. The previous government required licensing. There were fees and taxes everywhere. Inspectors were common, both to monitor the quality of the goods, but also overseeing working conditions. The biggest change? You used to have a workforce that wasn't actually doing it by choice. Under authority rules, that's all over. No unpaid labor, but virtually no regulations. Where there were fees, there are now bribes. If the roll would have come up negative, I would have made a note. The following year, I might have rolled a development dice and potentially removed a d6 from the formula, or added a d4. I might have had a letter sent to the PCs requesting help, money, or advice. This is only because damn near the whole party invested in these guys. Since the business rolled well, I'll have to assume things are going well, and they are successfully navigating the system. I'll name the manager. How about we make him somebody from Heston? Arnold Worthy sounds like a solid Hestonite name. I think I'll up the ante for next year and change the formula to dun 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 46 minus 44. Remember that ultimately I don't really care if profits climb consistently into the thousands. I have a high-level group. Remember to keep an eye on your potential highs and lows based on your own situation. I also don't care if it fails entirely. I could pressure my PCs with a side quest if they weren't doing a million things already. It could be dealing with a monster type. Maybe a hag is interfering with the organization. This could be a quest that the party farms out. Have you ever had the PCs post a bounty instead of taking one? They could put 1,000 gold on the head of the hag to deal with such a problem. More likely, I would skip the hag and keep this to an eco-RP thing. That's economics and role-playing, if you don't get my abbreviations there. Maybe the request would be to smooth over relations with the order that monitors trade routes to the north. The party toughs could strong-arm somebody, or they could find some other solution. Lesson number 1, however, is that you don't have to do any of these things. It's a business, far below the excitement level players are used to dealing with. They might hire an investment manager to increase their profits. It's up to you to decide what effect it has. Maybe it just adds a +2 at the end of the equation, or maybe they start skimming profits. You can also change the dice at will. You can have a year of bad weather, make those D4s D8s, or take away a D6 entirely. For that matter, don't roll dice at all. If you know the river is having a catastrophic flood one year, the business just fails. My PCs are now invested in a dozen or so separate businesses. I promise you that 1 or 2 of these are going to cease to exist. Businesses fail every day. In all sorts of adventure, you and your players have to determine the stakes. In combat, it's all about player deaths, curses, and disfigurement. All the bad things that can happen to people leading such dangerous lives. In the world of economics, we usually give players a pass and just pour money into their coffers. In my game, it just depends on how hands-on a player is with a given investment. My nobleman player, he had spent a lot of gold and role-playing moments to develop a brewery. Rarely a session passes that he doesn't mention it in some regard. I can't imagine ever just telling him one day, "Sorry, it failed." However, that armory business he had shares in and conquered lands, it might. Now, it's up to you. Did the video fail or succeed? We're right up against 400 subs, so if you've listened all the way to this point, hit that button. I need the subscriptions. Like and comment. It helps so much. One of my goals is to become monetized by the end of 2025, but that's only going to happen if I have earned your clicks. As usual, whether you do or don't, I'm glad that you are here. I never expect you to adopt my ideas entirely, but I hope to offer something to help inspire the next step in your own process. I hope you are all enjoying the holidays in whatever capacity works for you. The world is a better place with you in it. Thanks for being you. Merry Christmas, everyone. Cheers.